Hello everyone and welcome to the module where we go over landing pages. So today what we're going to do is go over the basics of how to actually make a landing page, and we're going to use Adobe Muse and we're going to make a lander for desktop, so not so much mobile. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between static and dynamic landers, and just talk a little bit about live editing of landers and how you can kind of make things a little bit easier there. So the basic process there is that you make a landing page in Muse, then you export it as HTML, and then you want to rip the code apart and get rid of the things that aren't necessary. So Muse adds a lot of junk that you don't actually need, that you can remove, that won't actually affect the performance of the lander visually, but removes data that is not needed. And speed is always key, so we want to remove anything that we don't need. Then you go live edit it. So you would open the lander and you would do some live editing to change the various things that you want to change to have the lander present in the way that you want to present. And my favorite tool for doing that is the Firefox Web Developer Tools. Now, hopefully you can see there's quite a lot that you have to do here. You have to make the lander, export it, clean it up, do some live editing, and so on and so on. So for this reason, it's kind of useful to make templates and put some effort into having template pages that you can use across lots of campaigns where you just change the images, change the headlines, change the ad copy, and so on, but the core framework is the same, and that can save you a lot of time. So now I just want to talk a little bit about CSS, because CSS is one of those things that it lets you have complete control over how your page actually presents, and if you understand a little bit about CSS and how to edit it, it can save you a lot of trouble. So if you were to look at the source code of a web page, what you'd essentially see is a lot of HTML, and you'd have a lot of elements. So you'd have text and elements, and text and images, and H1 and H3 and divs and so on. And the HTML essentially consists of elements that start and end with tags. For example, tag inside greater than and less than signs, and then an end tag with a /. Now, the web browser renders all of these elements in a specific way based on instructions for styling that is in the CSS, or the cascading style sheets. Now, there's actually multiple places where the styling information can be. It can be in external style sheets, so CSS files, which are referenced to or loaded in the head part of the HTML. You could have internal styles where the same kind of information that is in these external CSS files is just fully written out in the head part of the HTML instead. Or you can have inline styles, and this is where the CSS or the style information is kind of hard-coded directly into the tags. Now, the browser prioritizes which ones actually which ones actually get honored when it's deciding how to render things. And this is where you get this cascading nature. So the inline styles are the most important, and then you have the internal styles that are in the page, which are less important, but they are more important than external style sheets. So you can have an external style sheet which sets to give you an example of like the practical implications, for a full-blown website, you might have an external style sheet which sets the base styles for the entire site. But then on specific pages where you want to do something a little different, you might have internal styles which then override that's in the external style sheet, even though there's like overlapping conflicts there in terms of the styling information. Now, when you're styling elements in your actual HTML, you can assign the elements something called a class or an ID, as you can kind of see here in the slide. Now, then when you get into the CSS, you can reference those IDs and those classes. So you basically tell, you name your elements, and then in the CSS you tell the browser to render that element in this specific way. Now, the useful implication of this and of the way we use CSS is that we can live edit the way that the page actually renders very, very easily using something like Firefox's Web Developer Tools. So what I'm going to do now is just jump to a screen cap where I show you me editing that template business page that I provided to make it look a little different using these styling tools, to show you how you can do this very, very quickly, even if you have very little technical knowledge. So here we have the business page template that I provided to you guys. What I want to do now is just show you how easy it is to actually use CSS to edit the way in which your page presents. both to make tweaks, to make things look better, and to make different variations from a base template. So in Firefox, which is my favorite tool for actually doing these live edits, what you can do is just hit F12. Now F12 will bring up your web dev tools, which will be on one of these tabs. Usually you'll be on Inspector, but you can switch to Console to see various things. But we want the style editor. With the style, actually, sorry, let's get out of that. Here's an easy way to get in. If you want to change this business name styling, right click on it, go to Inspect Element. Now when you inspect element, so this is the main place you'll start in terms of changing styling. As you roll over things, it highlights that element so that you know what is what. And if you expand these by clicking on them or pressing the right arrow to kind of drill down in and open things, you can see all of these various things. So I'll just open this page up a little bit. Okay, and as I scroll over, you can see these divs, these H1s, P for paragraph, section, and so on. It's quite clear what elements these correspond to. Now, say I want to change the styling of business name. I can just inspect element on that to jump straight to it if I'm lazy. And in here, I can see the browser basically showing me the various CSS classes and IDs that are contributing to the overall style of that text. If I go to computed, it shows me the final results that it gets for everything. Here in the rules, it basically tells you every rule which is influencing it, and you have strike-throughs where some other rule is actually kind of like superseding that. For here, for example, the global style is header 1 to be 2 EM font size, but we have a more specific one which basically affects H1 elements that are inside the header that has a different font size. So that one kind of, because of the rules of cascading style sheets, this one takes over. Now here you can just tick and untick them to change, to turn them on and off. And if I wanted to change the font size, for example, I can just click in here and put whatever I want or hold the up and down arrows. Easy. Now, if I want to change the actual font style, I could put Arial, and that affects quite a few things because of the cascading nature of things. But I don't want to do that. I want to reset this. If I want to reset, I can just hit F5 to refresh. Now, one of the coolest things is if you actually go into the CSS, these files that the CSS comes from, for example, this one, it goes to the header H1 spot. I can change things in here. Say if I put this to 2, if I hit Control S, see the star here? It's actually saved that file. So if you're doing it directly on your computer and it's local, then you can actually directly save these changes in real time as you're actually doing things. So I can change the font weight, the font size and everything, hit Control S and it's done. So if I refresh, it's saved. So for example, if I want to just do a complete kind of makeover here, I could make this one Arial. I could get rid of font style. I could, what else do I want to do? Text line center, let's make this yellow, because it's disgusting. For these, what are these? These are H1 within div class slogan. Here we are, dot main content slogan, so let's make this 2.1, and we can add font color if we want. Let's just drill straight into this main CSS and put it here. We need a semicolon there. Oh, that's terrible. Now notice how everything kind of reset when I went in here. That's because I was changing things in the inspector here, which is just kind of on the fly changes rather than doing so in the actual CSS itself. So let's go back to this header. We can change him. Let's make him 3. Let's make his color. What color do we want him, guys? Let's make it black. That looks terrible. We can make him much bigger. You can do whatever you want. This button here, you want to change the color. Easy. Here's where the color is being set. You can see it's this one here. So go to the background, change this to something nasty green. Oops. No, that's blue. Red, green, blue. Ugh, terrible. Now if I hit Control S and I completely close that and I refresh, there we go, all saved. So that's Pretty easy way to actually modify CSS and alter the style of your pages. If you want this to span out more, you can sort of see the why that is so narrow. If we go to main content, what have we got in here? Slogan. There we go, max width 620, so we can increase that. And we could even make it just 90%. Now if we want to actually view how it will change when we change the browser width, pretty easy. The other thing is you can hit Control-Shift-M to bring up the responsive view. Easy peasy. Okay, this is distracting. I'll get back to the presentation. Now, moving on from that, let's talk about landing pages and the anatomy of a good lander. So we can break a good landing page down into several key blocks: the headline, the body copy, and the call to action. So these are kind of the three primary things which you will be working on in a simple landing page. I guess images are probably another one which kind of come into composition overall. Now, remember the points that we went over earlier. First of all, speed. So for landing pages, it's really important that they are as fast as possible. All else being equal, the fastest loading landing page will win when it comes to revenue. Think about usability. So does it display properly on your device or on other people's devices or in all the browsers that you expect people to be using? So this is where you can use tools like BrowserStack, for example, to render screenshots in multiple browsers to make sure that it works fine. You could also do the same with mobile devices with BrowserStack. You could test your mobile landing pages on an emulator or on your real device. Think about how a user actually uses it and make sure you're avoiding silly mistakes, like for example on some pages when the device is below a certain width, like the screen is kind of narrow, the call to action gets cut off for some reason because of poor CSS coding for the page. Think about your ad copy and how you're actually going to write your sales pitch in this page, and think about split testing. What are you going to split test on that page? What kind of landers are you going to split test? And so on. Now, on the note of usability, be aware that with mobile landers, they need to be responsive. Why? Because there are so many devices out there that there are there's a very large number of screen resolutions and physical size variations that you may encounter, including, and added to that you could be in portrait or landscape orientation when you're actually looking at a landing page. So the pages themselves need to be designed to be responsive. We tend to do this from the ground up from our initial design, and we do so using CSS. So CSS being for changing the styling of the page. Now, we do this using breakpoints, and this is where when the page gets below a certain width, we kind of change things. We change the design, or we change the way certain things are styled. We also use media queries, which kind of come hand in hand with breakpoints, where we can kind of say, for different types of devices, change these overall properties so that you can make it so that iPads, for example, or iOS devices, or devices with screen widths above a certain type, kind of rescale and change the way that your page works. We'll talk about this a bit later, but you just kind of have to be aware of the fact that mobile landing pages kind of need a bit more thought put into the way they're going to display than typical desktop landing pages. The other thing you tend to do is make it fluid so that the size of different elements in the actual page, they scale on a percentage basis. So rather than saying something is 500 pixels wide, you might say it's 80% of the full page width, and that way it can scale as you resize the screen. And you'll see this in the custom landers and the templates that are available. And I mentioned orientation, design for portrait. So you can almost forget landscape because the majority of people who are going to be browsing your sites, they're going to be using it in portrait. If you think about the way that you use your phone, you're very rarely ever using it in landscape orientation. The only time I really use it in landscape orientation is when I'm watching like a YouTube video because I want it to actually take up the entire screen. Now, okay, onto the anatomy of a lander. So I mentioned that we can break things down into three things: headline, body copy, and call to action. So here is an extremely simple example of a basic layout of a landing page, which is likely to, do okay, content aside. You have a basic headline. Now, the headline should be about 80% of your work. Most people only read the headlines of material, okay? So when someone's looking at a landing page or skimming through a newspaper, for the most part, the headline is the first thing that they read, and if that doesn't catch their attention, you've lost them. So the headlines should take a lot of your time and your effort. Now, I would suggest that you do practical exercises when you're writing headlines. Try to write 25 different headlines for your landing page or for your ads for the specific angle that you're doing. Then you can split test some of the best ones. So it's relatively well known that at places like BuzzFeed or Upworthy, I forget which one, the people who make these really viral ads or clickbait heavy ads on Facebook, when they have various articles that they put out and that they advertise, their copywriters tend to write something like 20 to 30 different headlines for a single article, and they have to get to that level. Like they have to get to 25 completely different headlines written before they're actually allowed to review them and find the best one. And this pushes you to think outside the box and to be creative rather than just using the same stock standard stuff all of the time. Now, sub-headlines can also be useful. For skim readers, they also tend to read sub-headlines as well, so you can kind of have something underneath your headline as well to just try and... It's something you should split test, see whether that actually helps. I'll leave that to you guys. Now with the headlines, there's various things that you can focus on. And here's a bullet point list of the things that you should be mindful of, or the things that you can consider when you're thinking about the headlines that you're trying to create. And I'll include a lot, or I've already included last week, a lot of material on copywriting and converting, so you can refer to that as well. But think about highlighting the benefits of your product or service, attacking pain points that the market may have, the things which drive them mad, or the things which they're scared about, or the things which upset them, things which cause an emotional response from your audience. Use specificity. So this app will make your phone 27% faster, not just faster, but 27% exactly. Use urgency. So give them a sense of urgency, like they need to do this now. Ask them questions. That's another way to actually get more of a response from people. Typically, the same line of text, but with a question mark at the end of it, gets people's attention more often than the unquestioned material. Make it understandable. So if someone's skimming through your actual copy or your headline, and in that skim or that quick read through it, they don't 100% understand what was just said, then that's not a good headline and you've failed. So make it understandable. Use your senses. So things like smell and touch and sight and sound appeal to those human senses. So this is why you'll see the descriptions of like a Black Forest cake, for example. They appeal to the senses. Like they'll talk about how the dark like maroon sauce on the top of it like glistens as it glides down the side, and like a raindrop, blah blah blah, and you can almost hear the sound of that. Like the way that they tend to write ad copy about certain things always appeals to the senses and makes you almost visualize what that thing looks like, or what it sounds like, or what it might taste like. Do that. So try to use you rather than me or just he, she, it kind of stuff. Appeal to that person directly and tell them that you can get something out of this. Explain. So validate what you say with some sort of explanation or justification for why that's the case, to kind of break down that person's resistance to believing what you're actually saying. Call out attributes. So if you know the kind of traffic that you're getting, you can call them out on. So if you can call them out. So if you know that they're a gamer, call out that they're a gamer. If you know that they're male, call out them as being male. If you know that they're on an Apple device, talk about their Apple device, and so on and so on. Scarcity. So common tactic to tell people that there is a certain limit to the number of things that they could get, or the number of people who could get that thing or that benefit or that reward, and that inherently makes them want it more. Use formulae. So you can use the headline kind of templates that we've provided you and just leverage those for your testing and for creating different headlines. And then try testing things like using a call to action in the headline, like either clickable or not, asking various questions in the headline rather than not having a statement, using short headlines rather than long headlines, using weird characters like weird emoji and stuff like that, using warnings or using qualifiers. So a qualifier could be something like, this app could make your phone 27% faster, everyone else is doing it. Like, qualify that in some sort of way. Now, be aware there are so many things that you could test when it comes to headlines. So while there's no excuse for not continually testing various things, you shouldn't try to vary far too much at once. Just come up with completely different headlines and ways of attacking the problem in front of you. So it's kind of like angles. You want to use completely different angles or completely different lander compositions. At the same time, you want to try completely different headline arrangements and approaches rather than just changing this headline and this headline with, scarcity element added in the last 3 words and so on. Now, moving on to body copy. So when it gets to body copy, there's just so many words there that you get to just unleash your inner copywriter. Now, with mobile landing pages and the kind of stuff we're doing with the app installs, you don't need to write much, so you don't want to go too overboard here. But here's another bullet point list of the things that you can consider. So look at what others are doing. So spy in the marketplace and see what other landers you can see, and look at what other people are doing. What other people are doing overall, like if you see a trend, is probably indicative of what tends to work. So to get onto some more general things, highlight benefits, use bullet points like the ones that you're looking at, drive a sense of urgency and scarcity, just like in headlines, value stack. So value stacking is where you say you get this, but you get this as well, and you get this, like the value just keeps stacking. Use strategic text, emboldening, italicizing, underwriting, and so on. You don't just have to have a single call to action at the end of your document. You can actually have one at the beginning, one at the end, one in the middle, and so on. Now, when you're looking at your body copy, think as well, this sentence which highlights a certain benefit, can I make it more powerful? Can I make it more positive? You usually can. You can use power words as part of doing this. So I'll give you a list somewhere of power words. I think there's a list of nice power words in Cashvertising maybe as well. This is not so relevant to what you're doing, but you can do price anchoring. And this is something you will see all the time. So imagine you're on a website like a software as a service website, and they have some monthly plans. You'll always see that there's one in the middle which is kind of highlighted from the rest. It's the recommended most popular plan. It's priced competitively versus the highest tier plan, so it looks like an extremely valuable plan compared to that, but it's not that much more expensive than the budget plan. So it's like, well, why would I get the budget plan when the recommended plan in the middle is only like an extra $5 per month, and that other premium plan is an extra $50 per month? So this is kind of price anchoring. You set a high price point in the people's mind, and then things look differently relative to that. Sell the fear. So I won't get too much into this, but fear of missing out and fear of losing things and fear of unwanted circumstances is generally quite a powerful driver of human behavior and is used and exploited quite a lot in marketing ad copy. And then there's various other things you can do, like labeling your readers, selling secrets, using testimonials and numbers, and so on and so on. But I've already talked about this kind of stuff in the copywriting and converting modules, so I won't talk too much about it now. Lastly, we have the call to action. So ultimately, the call to action is the final interaction that users will have with your landing page, because hopefully they're going to click it and it's going to send them off to the offer where they are going to do whatever it is that you want them to do. So make it short and make it clear and to the point. If you think that your call to action is not really that obvious, make it more obvious. If you think it's really long, make it shorter. You want to just make that call to action very obvious to the user, very clear what they need to do, and very clear what that call to action is going to achieve. So stuff like click here now, they tell the user to do something, right? To click here to register, click here to download. That's telling people what that actual clicking action is going to achieve. Register in 2 minutes, that's telling people what's going to happen when they actually click the button. They're going to register, and it's giving them some sort of incentive in the sense that it's going to be very quick and easy for them to do. Improve my credit rating. So this is giving them, it's telling them what this clicking of this button is going to do for them. So you're kind of moving further down the hierarchy of or the tiers in terms of how good this call to action is, right? So you have telling them what to do, telling them what they're going to do and what's going to come after that, telling them one of the benefits of what's going to happen when they click the button, and then telling them one of the ultimate benefits that's going to come out of them actually clicking on this button and following through. Try to use personal kind of pronouns like my, so not improve your credit rating, but improve my credit rating, so that the person clicking it is thinking about what it's going to do for them. Create your character now is another way of doing it. So for a game, for example, but I would probably say create my character now. That would probably work a little bit better, but of course, something to split test. And also consider putting a PS, a postscript, underneath the call to actions. It's well known that in emails, the PS in an email is generally extremely well read. People kind of just naturally want to read the kind of PS, because it's kind of like a secret, like something that's really important to actually take note of. So having these under call to actions can work quite effectively as well. So in any case, you're going to get some experience making landing pages, deploying landing pages, testing various content in the landing pages, and a lot of this is going to come down to experience in terms of figuring out what works with landing pages, what doesn't, and fiddling with the actual process there in terms of deploying those landing pages and so on. And you will get a lot better at it. You will make templates, and you will find that landing pages slowly become less and less of this barrier to actually getting good campaigns going. So I've added various resources to this module, so some links to basic HTML and CSS courses, because you do kind of need to know a little bit. You can always partner with someone and hire someone to do landing page stuff for you, but it's kind of important that you know the basics of how a landing page works, at least to the point that you can edit a landing page or do basic edits if you need to. It's a bit, it's a bit amateurish if you need to send in a landing page to a designer because you want to change the color of a headline font. I mean, come on, anyone can change the color of a headline font if it's just a single hex code in CSS. And hopefully these things won't be very difficult for any of you to do by the end of this. So I've also made some mobile and desktop Lander templates, which I used in a previous run. And I'm going to provide those to you as well. And then I'm also going to remake those and make them look a little prettier, so that one, you can have those, and two, you can split test them against the kind of uglier peers. I'll provide some Muse templates as well, so some Adobe Muse templates for desktop landers. I could do some mobile ones, but you're never going to get the most responsive lander from using Muse. And to be honest, there's not really that many good tools that do nice responsive landers unless you kind of know what you're doing in the first place. In any case, I'm open to you guys asking for more there. Now, I just wanted to give you a glance over the ugly templates that I've created for you, just so that I can show you the responsiveness that I was talking about. So I'll cut to a quick screen cap of that now. So here are some of the landers that I had created a while ago for the previous course, and they're very, very simple, but they're mobile responsive and can serve as templates for you guys to improve. So at the moment, this one kind of looks terrible, right? Like, what's happening with this image up here? And it's because we're in landscape desktop mode, and it's not really designed for that. Now, the best way to view the responsiveness, at least in Firefox, is to hit Control-Shift-M to bring up the essentially the responsive window system. So if I make this more portrait, like reflecting an actual mobile device, you can see it actually makes a lot more sense. And when you get a bit too skinny, we have some sort of fade out gradient. That looks terrible here. But if there's one thing that you'll learn about these kinds of campaigns, it's that a lander does not need to be beautiful for it to convert. And for the most part, the ones you see in the wild, they will not be beautiful landers. They will generally be considered pretty ugly, but the fact is, just ugly converts. So this landing page is pretty simple. If you view the source code of it, you can see how simple it is. There's not much code there, but it links to a single style.css file where you have all of the actual CSS in here, kind of relatively well labeled in terms of what is actually being affected there, and it's easy to actually edit the styling information here, right? We already kind of talked about this, how you can drill into the style there You can change the font size if you want. You can change the margins. You can change the font weights, the widths, and everything like that. It's up to you, and I'm sure many of you on the course will be absolutely comfortable with doing this kind of stuff. So this is one basic lander here. Here is a second one that I made, and you can see up here it kind of has this model detected thing there, so it's kind of built expecting you to pass model from your tracker to your landing page, for example like this. And if you do that, then perhaps it would display here. If we look at the source code, we can see what it's actually trying to do. It's not dynamic at the moment. I've left that for other people to figure out. So this here is not dynamic at all. You can use JavaScript or PHP to pull out whatever value you have up here to make this look proper. And if we go to mobile responsive view, you can see that as we squish it down, at some point it changes to put the call to action below, and then the icon above, and then the top sort of breadcrumb kind of area. The font size changes as we get a little too small, and then it turns into this. So there's some responsiveness built into there, and that's what your landers for mobile should really be like. They generally should be responsive so that they look okay like this, they look okay like that, and they look okay like that. And of course like that if you're in landscape mode. Mockup 3, my favorite mockup, because of My Little Pony. This, it's pretty similar. It's just very, very basic. Headline, sub-headline, countdown timer, other ad copy, call to action, some image. Mockup 4, a bit more advanced. So here we have something that's kind of like you're progressing through some sort of thing, and you're suggesting maybe there's been a problem, or there's been an issue, or maybe like a version's out of date or something. Here's some suggestions, and we're going to the Play Store next so people kind of know where they're being sent. Headline, subheadline, and a basic little quiz. This is responsive as well to some extent. And I believe this quiz works, so we can sort of tick, cross, no. It's like, no, you have to actually tick this. Tick, tick, done. And lastly, mockup 5. So the kinds of mockups I like to create, or the kinds of templates I like to create, generally have basic text and like boxes that are shaded so that when you're resizing things, you know exactly how the actual responsive divisions and segments of the page are actually responding. I like using color blocks for this kind of thing. And I believe this header expands. There you go, there's something in there. So this is called Burger Nav. So this is kind of like the burger icon, which is, it's the typical icon you have on mobile for this is a menu, click this. So people are likely to thumb tap these things out of habit, so you can have some secret little message in there. And that's pretty much it. Those are the ugly landers. Right, cutting back to the presentation. And moving back, I'm going to make some nicer versions of these pages, and we're kind of open to making some more templates for the cohort for you guys to actually use in your campaign. Now, as for your tasks, there's obviously a lot to do in terms of making landing pages if you're relatively new to it. So I would browse through the resources first, look at the tutorials on HTML and CSS, get yourself comfortable with basic page editing and doing this live editing using the Firefox web developer tools. You can do the same thing in Chrome, but if I'm honest, I kind of find the Firefox tools better and a little bit more intuitive, but that's subjective, and it's really up to you in terms of what it is that you kind of like more. Now you can browse the templates that I've provided as well, take those, rip them apart, change them however you want, and start building pages for your campaigns. Now in terms of tracking those, hopefully you'll all figure out how to actually use FunnelFlux to do so, but all you essentially need is to get an action URL from your funnel. So if you're in the funnel editor and you have a landing page and then you say on action 3, go to this offer, you just right click on action 3, get the URL for that, and then that's the URL you use for your